On today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, a conversation with the Texans' long-lost cousins. I got Tyler Rowland from Locked On Titans here to discuss big changes and expectations for Tennessee, and will the Houston Texans offseason changes get them over the hump?
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Battle Red Nation, Bulls on parade from H-Town to your town. Today's show and every show is for Texan fans all around. I'm your Texans football analyst and credential media member, John Hickman. Excited for today's conversation. We'll feature Tyler Rowland of Locked On Tennessee Titans. But I got to shout out everybody that makes us their first listen of the day. Tennessee, Locked On Titans, Locked On Texans, and for being a part of our everyday family, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'll close out the show looking at the Houston Texans signing some cornerback depth, something that's absolutely needed for Houston. The timing for this signing is important, may not be as important or huge as the name the Houston Texans signed. So we'll talk about Houston and Damon Arnette. But this show will be based around the Titans and the Texans. You know, the expectations for Tennessee in 2025, now that they have what I would consider a respectable quarterback prospect in Cam Ward. Could he get some of those talented wide receivers and playmakers the ball and elevate that roster? We'll dive into a conversation surrounding Houston and the Texans offseason changes. So that's going to be a fun conversation. Without further ado.
All right, so continuing the division rival week here that I'm having on Locked On Titans, my favorite part of every episode of the deep dive into a division rival is the crossover section. Of course, we have John Hickman from Locked On Texans on the show to break things down. John, obviously, the Texans, 2 years, back-to-back, playoff wins. Yeah. Things last year were weird, right? Because it didn't look as good, but yet the team still accomplished good goals that any team in the NFL would want. Just what's your general feel about the team right now? Because they've been successful, but it felt weird last year.
This is the year Texans got to get over the hump. They got to win a divisional playoff game this year. I think there's nowhere around it. We're honest about the AFC South. Our division isn't the strongest when we look around the landscape of the NFL. So it does feel like any given year, any given season, we could see a team kind of swing it. However, the Texans have positioned themselves to be the top dogs in the division. So the division isn't really like a worry right now, at least for me. I think every team has gotten better, but the Colts. I think the Tennessee Titans have gotten a lot better. They finally have a quarterback, and I think that's going to make a difference for you guys. I think Jacksonville will be in a better position. But for Houston, it is all about, especially when you look at some of the decisions that were made in the offseason, kicking it off with moving on from Bobby Slowick, they got to be able to get to a divisional game and win a divisional game. That's been their Achilles heel the last couple of seasons, and that's what's been holding them back.
Do you think the biggest move of the offseason for the Texans then is that change from Bobby Slowick to Nick Caley at offensive coordinator, or would you point to something else maybe as the biggest move of the offseason for the team?
I think it'll be 60-40 Bobby Slowick, Laremy Tunsil. And with Bobby, you look at some of the things that really hurt the Houston Texans last year. The reports that right now we've heard coming out of the locker room, coming out of the facility is Bobby didn't take well to player involvement in terms of what the players wanted to do. It's more so trust the system. And that really hurt Houston a lot of times in second halves of games. And you guys were able to sneak a dub against the Houston Texans last year, right? So moving on from your offensive play caller who did win 2 playoff games with you,
right?
That's major. But also moving on from perennial Pro Bowler, one of the best pass blocking left tackles in the NFL in Laremy Tunsil. That's major because they didn't necessarily replace him with a guy that you have the absolute trust will be able to fill the void of Laremy Tunsil. Cam Robinson's here in Houston. Obviously, you know a lot about Cam Robinson as he played in Jacksonville. You've been covering Tennessee Titans for 6 years now.
6 seasons. Yeah, this will be year 7. It's crazy.
Goodness gracious, man. We got some grades grown in, but we know a lot about Cam Robinson. We know the highs, we know the lows. He's fitting. He's going to fit here in Houston, but he's no Larry Tunsil. So how will you protect your franchise quarterback in his blind side, but also a first-year play caller in Nick Caley replacing Bobby Sloyd? Those are the two major storylines, and ultimately those will be the two major reasons why we'll see Houston rebound from a quote-unquote disappointing sophomore year under DeMeco Ryans and C.J. Stroud, or not rebound, have the same failures, and we see C.J. Stroud get hit and sacked over 50 times.
So I have to lay this out. You know, everybody says, oh, the media, they spin their narratives. Look, I don't know if I can call myself the media, but I'm spinning the narrative. I have a question for you. So the issue with having a defensive-minded head coach is getting the offensive coordinator position right multiple times. It's not just once. You can't just get it right once, because you get it right, that offensive coordinator is going to get hired to be a head coach, and then you got to get it right again, okay? Yeah. That's how the Eagles just won that Super Bowl, right? They get to the Super Bowl with their coordinators. Both of them leave to be head coaches. They have a down year because they replaced them with bad replacements, and then once Sirianni gets the replacements right again as a CEO head coach who isn't a scheme lord on either side, now they're ready to go succeed. Is there any worry in Houston that the ownership group could look, if you have another season, let's say the Texans win 9 games and go to the playoffs but lose in round 1, you know, what seems like a step back? Is there any worry that, or maybe you wouldn't be worried about it and would agree, that maybe DeMeco Ryans is on the hot seat, maybe not this year, but next year, because he can't get C.J. Stroud right, and that's the most important player in the franchise?
No, I don't think it'll be DeMeco Ryans let go. I think it'll be we'll start to hear those chatters about Nick Caserio. And let me say something, because I don't want – this will also air on Locked On Texans. I don't want people to confuse what I am saying. Nick Caserio has done a phenomenal job of pulling this franchise out of the mud when Deshaun didn't want to play here anymore. Like, that was a huge story, and I think the last 2 seasons for Houston – maybe some people locally or nationally have forgotten how bad the Houston Texans were for a few years. So he's done a very good job of getting Houston out of that place, bringing in C.J. Stroud and Will Anderson in the same draft. Derek Stingley, who's an all-pro cornerback. Nico Collins, who a lot of people feel like is a top 12 wide receiver in the NFL.
Probably higher.
Lassiter, probably higher. So he's done a very good job. With that being said, he has yet to be able to find real protection for the quarterback position.
Yeah.
King Green's in Philly, and there was a report about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks, he got beat on 11 consecutive plays. Offensive line has not worked out for Nick Caserio. Yeah. You can also look at the moves that were recently made. Nick Caley, Cole Popovich, they come from a New England background. So if they struggle in 2025 and the offense doesn't take a step forward, and the offensive line doesn't take a step forward, then those ties, I think, can eventually come back to bite Nick Caserio. So I don't think it'll be DeMeco. I think it'll be more so Nick Caserio. This is year 5 on a 6-year contract that he signed. He has 1 year left. Houston could look to move on if he does not, and if the moves don't pan out for him.
Yeah, that's fair. You could say, hey, we have the right head coach. We just need more out of the roster on offense to move forward. That's a way to look at it for sure. My last question for you really is this. What are your expectations for the Texans this year? And I mean, listen, we're going to have our division rival crossover before the season, as we always do. But just right now, where things are at moving forward, where do you think the Texans are going to be this year? And do you think they take that step forward into the final 8 teams in the NFL?
Man, you know, Tyler, that's tough, man. Back-to-back division champs. Yep. They got a dub on wild card weekend, back-to-back years. And then back-to-back years, they either face the best team. they face Kansas City or Baltimore in the AFC South.
Yeah. Lamar, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. Good luck.
It's tough. I absolutely think the Houston Texans are the 4th best team right now in the AFC based off of how 2024 ended, right? You could say Baltimore, Buffalo, and Kansas City.
Yeah.
For Houston, I do think realistically is just get into an AFC Championship game.
Yeah.
I don't want to take a shot. Super Bowl, I don't want to be unrealistic about it, but they got the quarterback to do it, I believe so. They've invested in their playmakers, and I think that they've done a better job of raising the floor of the running back unit. Nick Chubb is now here in Houston. Of the wide receiver unit, they brought in some vets, so they don't have to rely on some of those younger receivers. It's just about getting to the AFC Championship game for me. And I think that they can. I think we'll have to see how the season starts. LA Buccaneers to kick it off. That's going to be two big tests for the Houston Texans to determine the type of team that they have.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. They have such a narrow window for what success is considered. It's just a tough place to be when you're facing the competition in the AFC that you are. But with that being said, I got more on the Texans. Going to give my predictions for what the Texans do this year here on my episode of Locked On Titans. But we'll talk some Texans as well or Titans for Locked On Texans right now.
Texas fans, you ever check your bank account and wonder where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes into play, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just another budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, spending, in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Managing your money with your partner is even smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. And instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check all of your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code Locked On NFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code Locked On NFL for half off your first year. Titans fans, Texan fans, let's rock together. Summertime, so no need for beef. Plus, we don't want those jerseys no more. I got to ask you a question about
I like the Texans jerseys now. I mean, I know they're cool classics and all, but it's not like the Texans have if the Texans had bad jerseys and then they were cool, the Texans jerseys are cool.
And I love these color rushes that they've been some of these new jerseys Houston has been flirting with have been pretty.
Red's my favorite color. So I love red and they're heavy reds, all reds, they're sick.
So hopefully we see a lot of red when we play y'all this year.
Whole lot of red, right?
A lot of red. I got to ask you, the number one question is, what are the vibes around Tennessee right now with Cam Ward?
The vibes are high, man. It's almost dangerously high for me as a Tennessee Titans fan for 25 years now. It's I don't like this. I don't like how excited everyone is because things like that usually come crashing down for the Titans. But it's time to believe, man. It's time to have hope. Football's supposed to be fun. Want to have a good team, want to have good excitement, and it's got to be the Titans' time eventually to have. Now, it should have been Vince Young. I blame Jeff Fisher for that. It should have been Vince Young.
Pause right there.
I'll go to the grave. I'll go to the grave defending Vince Young. He was Cam Newton before Cam Newton. He just didn't have a good enough support system to keep him where he needed to be. But regardless of that, I just want to have a homegrown guy. And Marcus looked good early, and then he flamed out with the injuries, and I didn't think that he had the competitive obsessiveness to be a top-level quarterback in the NFL. Personally, just his personality type, it's just not there for him in this competitive industry. Cam Ward has that. All that 5 a.m. showing up, them kicking him out of the office, that's all real. He is a competitive, obsessive person, and I think that's what you have to be the greats in these hyper-competitive industries like sports and other things, So the Cam Ward hype is at an all-time high, but, at the end of the day, he's got to go out and prove it. So we're a long way away from him doing that.
He has to prove it, but he also needs the weapons around him to step up as well.
Yes.
What's your boy, man? Treylon Burks.
Oh, gosh.
If you guys go to Tyler's page and just type in Treylon Burks' name, you'll see some of the most entertaining tweets that you're going to see around Burks. But, aside from Burks, Calvin Ridley, he's a dog. He's wide receiver one. I've heard a lot of good things about Miami rookie receiver Xavier
Restrepo.
Restrepo. He's been having a good mini camp and everything. What are the weapons around Cam Ward looking like for you guys? Like, should we be scared or worried at all?
Well, I think there should be like a slight worry, I guess. Cautious pessimism maybe is the way to go if you're a Texans fan, because like you should be pessimistic because it's the Titans, and like they're all rookies that we're about to talk about here that I'm about to name. But you should be cautious because they could actually be pretty decent. Like Alec Manor, he's a big 6'2" wide receiver out of Stanford. A lot of people expected him to be a top 100 pick. He fell. He's got some Michael Pittman Jr. to him. Like he's big, but he can run. He's like a smooth mover. Not quite Nico Collins, but I think if Alec Manor turned into a beast, it would kind of be like the way that Nico Collins plays. So not comparing them talent-wise, but just saying, sometimes it works out. Xavier Restrepo, like you mentioned, was Cam Ward's best target at Miami. Slot-only guy. Think about your, Danny Amendolas, your Julian Edelmans, your Wes Welker types. That's what Xavier Restrepo would be. He didn't get drafted because people say he's slow, but multiple days at mandatory minicamp for the Titans, he led the entire practice in catches. Like, he just gets open. There are guys who just get open. They may not be the fastest.
That 40 time don't matter, right?
Exactly. You know what I mean? So, like, you got him, and then Chim Dike out of Florida is a speedster, kind of vertical, straight line guy. Gunnar Helm, the tight end out of Texas, I have very high hopes for because the Titans need an all-around tight end, like a Dalton Schultz type, and I think Gunnar Helm can be like that for the Titans. So, they're all rookies. Obviously, they're not all going to be good. Like, the odds of that happening are very slim. I'm hoping for it, but I do think that you'll look at the Titans a year from now and still think, well, maybe not a year from now because free agency and the draft are over, but after the season and be like, yeah, they need to add more talent wide receiver. Even if these young guys are good, the odds of all of them being good enough for it to not be a problem anymore and be close to the Texans or whatever, like, that's not going to happen either. So it's still going to be a need at the end of the year, but I think they've done more than what they had last year. And Treylon Burks, man, I call him the ghost of Treylon Burks. I hate to be crass, but at the end of the day, you cannot, I said this last offseason, I say it again, you cannot factor in Treylon Burks to any discussions about the roster. Hey, should we sign this guy? Should we draft this guy? Treylon Burks' name should not be mentioned. He'll be off the team, if not this year, after the year because his contract's up. But I don't even think he makes the roster this year. I think they cut him.
Just two more questions for you. Realistically, this is a team that needed to also improve their offensive line. 52 sacks in 2024 between Will Levis and Mason Rudolph. Do you think that that's going to be an issue for you guys moving forward, or have the Tennessee Titans taken some of the young guys from last year, getting those guys coached up, and then did a very good job investing in that offensive line to make sure Cam Ward doesn't face those same issues?
Well, they've invested. I mean, you could say that. You go with 2 first-round picks, J.C. Latham and Peter Skoronski. You're moving Latham back to his natural position of right tackle. So, like Kevin Zeitler at right guard, who's 35 years old, but has been one of the top 10 guards in the NFL for quite some time, even into his 30s. Lloyd Cushenberry is the Titans center. He's a veteran player who's good, but he's coming off a torn Achilles last year. So will they have their backup center, Corey Levin, in to start the season? That's something that remains to be seen. The big question mark for me is Dan Moore. The Titans gave Dan Moore out of Pittsburgh $20 million a season to be their franchise left tackle, and Dan Moore led the NFL in sacks allowed last year. Now, Dan Moore defenders will tell you that Russell Wilson and Justin Fields as your quarterback will lead to a lot of sacks because they're holding the ball. And that's true, but take away, 6 sacks of the 14 that he gave up and blame him on the QBs. That's still a lot of sacks to give up for $20 million a year. Now, it's hard to find left tackles. Like, look what the Texans are doing. Cam Robinson would draft Ariante Ursary, but the Titans didn't draft a tackle high. So they're just banking on Dan Moore being the answer. And I just don't know. I'm wishy-washy on Dan Moore. He's an okay player, but is he worth that money? I don't know. So that's the big question mark. But when you say they invested in the offensive line, you aren't lying. They have. It just remains to be seen whether that will matter.
Realistically, what are the expectations for the Titans in 2025?
I think they just have to improve. Like, you got to win at least 5 games. If they win 4 games or 3 games, I think Callahan gets fired. That's really all this season is, to me, is Brian Callahan the man to grow with Cam Ward and lead this team in the new era of Cam Ward? Is he the guy for it? Because last year, I could do a whole episode on Brian Callahan, the games that he lost, what he did well, what he didn't do well. So there's a lot to unpack there that we don't have necessarily time to do in a crossover. But Brian Callahan and his future is what I'll be paying attention to. They need to win at least 5, probably 6 games, and Cam Ward to have good moments for him to keep his job. If not, the season was a failure, and they got to find somebody else to lead the ship.
There's going to be plenty of candidates out there if he does get fired. But thank you.
Fire Kyle Shanahan, 49ers. Miss the playoffs and fire Kyle Shanahan. Please, I'm begging you.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, I know. They're going to fire John Lynch instead.
Shout out to our Texan fans, Titan fans out there. This is one of our summer crossovers. Super excited for you guys to listen to it. You can follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12. T-Road.
Yep.
Let everybody know where they can find you. They know, but let them know.
Of course. Tic Tac Titans on Twitter, where I'm always going crazy. And then, of course, Locked On Titans and Locked On NFL. If you want your NFL fix, which I talk Texans and Titans every now and then over on Locked On NFL.
Thank you guys for checking out today's episode. We got more Texas talk on the way. Texan fans, thank you for making Locked On Texans your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Scouting. Training camp is getting closer and closer. Host Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Closing out today's show, talking cornerback. Houston has Derek Stingley. Houston has Kamari Lassiter. On the inside, Houston has Miles Bryant. Houston brought back Tremont Smith. In the offseason, the Houston Texans signed Ronald Darby, and we talked about him briefly. Excuse me, my apologies. We talked about Darby on a show before, but we know that he walked away. Houston also has Jalen Smith, who I will continue until I see otherwise. Kind of refer him as a player that I see blossoming in the Jalen Petrie role. Can he play outside? I can't wait to see. But in terms of outside cornerbacks, Kamari, Sting, Smith, Callaghan, D'Angelo Ross, and now Damon Arnette, former Las Vegas Raider first-round pick back in 2020. Played a season and a half. Had off-the-field issues. Don't want to dive into those. They're documented. You can go find them. But he was let go by the Vegas Raiders. Spent some time out of the NFL. Spent some time recently in the UFL where he posted 20 tackles, which is, pretty good. 19 tackles, an interception, a pick 6 for the Birmingham Stallions. And this was a player who came out of Ohio State, a lot of high expectations. We talked about him a few weeks ago when the Houston Texans worked him out, gave up big plays in his time in the NFL. He's 28 years old now, so the maturity is there. He even talked about being a more professional player now, so there isn't necessarily the concern of lack of maturity. Houston is a great place for players who have had issues in the past because of the culture, Houston has created to give themselves a rebound opportunity. With that being said, first-round talent, first-round grade back in 2020, this does not move the needle at all for Houston. It gives them depth, and I will say, hey, kudos to Houston for getting this deal done now, June 18th. June 18th, giving him an opportunity to get in the building. No details of the contract have been put out there yet, but he'll be able to get caught up to speed. He'll be here for training camp. He'll be a part of the competition to where now when we look at the outside cornerbacks, like I mentioned, Houston has 6, potentially 7 outside corners that will compete for a spot. Now, we already know 2 of those spots will be locked up, and that's Stingley and that's Lassiter. Based off of talent coming out of college, can Arnette beat out some of these guys? That's where training camp will get interesting. The conversation that I want to plant in your ears now is, okay, the Houston Texans currently has about $10 million in salary cap after signing Nick Chubb, a little bit north of that. I suspect the Houston Texans will also create some flexibility to give themselves a little bit more of a cushion. Once we get to training camp, once we get past the second game of preseason, they'll make some cuts. Maybe they'll look to save money that way as well. But I am suspecting for the Houston Texans, because they open up their season against LA, then they go to Tampa. They play they play the Buccaneers. LA Buccaneers, 2 division games. Those division games will always be played hard. And then I believe it is Baltimore that they play early in the season. Then they go into a week 6 bye. Houston will get a great opportunity to see where their defense is in terms of the starters and depth. They'll also get a good opportunity to see where their offense is in terms of starters and depth. Houston will have some money. I think they'll leave themselves open to go out there and either make a trade or sign one of these players that will either be released after preseason or that may be available right now. They'll get a good look at their roster, and they'll go out and make a move to make sure that they have everything possible to get their team over the hump. That move could come by offensive line. That move could very well come by cornerback depth. That move could very well be to bring in some more assistance at the wide receiver position. But Houston is not done yet. This move, signing Damon Arnette, and he's coming to a great organization. If you don't get it right here in Houston, then I don't see him getting another shot in the NFL. He'll have a chance to compete, but I don't think this moves the needle. I think this is just another opportunity for Houston to figure out what they have in some of the guys that are on the bottom half of the roster, which is, for Houston, I guess that's a good thing. I want guys to keep in mind that this is a critical year for the Houston Texans. Getting to the divisional round is nice. It's cute. Getting over that hump is the goal for the Houston Texans. And I think that between Nick Caserio on down to D'Amico Ryans, keeping options open is important. Very important. So Houston signs Damon Arnette. They worked him out about 10 days ago, a couple weeks ago now. Got him here before training camp. What type of player will he be? I don't think this is anything to overreact to or underreact to. I think this is just a reaction. But what type of player will he be? What type of presence can he bring for the Houston Texans on and off the field? And does he have any of that Ohio State talent? And by the way, how many Ohio State cornerbacks work out in the NFL? But we'll see what value he brings to the Houston Texans, if any. He could very well be a part of the first round of cuts. He could very well be the C.J. Henderson of last season. But he could. We don't know yet. I mean, he had a very decent year for UFL, but UFL talent and NFL talent, 2 different things. Thank y'all for listening to today's episode. Hopefully you got a better insight on what the Tennessee Titans have been cooking up over there in Tennessee, and hopefully Tennessee fans have got a better opportunity to see what the Houston Texans have been cooking up here in Houston as they get ready to conquer their 2025 season. And Houston should very well be the AFC South champions once again. Please subscribe on YouTube at Locked On Texans. Follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12. Until next time, Texan fans across the nation, we'll get back to our rookie diaries. And this time, the safety out of Penn State. Hadn't talked about him a lot. We will next time I talk to y'all. Peace.